start sharing my screen now. Let's just go right in. So today, this month, we are considering inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning, how you as a teacher can make use of inquiry-based learning in your class. In fact, that's I think that's the best form of teaching now that every teacher must adopt. Yeah, it's effective. It works. It works and it's better. It's actually better. So I'm going to start. Sorry. Okay. I don't know if you can see my screen. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. What we're talking about is inquiry-based learning. Inquiry-based learning, like I said, is one of the best forms of learning, forms of teaching that every teacher should adopt. Yeah, every teacher should adopt it. So let's start with why this session matters. Why inquiry-based learning? Why are we talking about inquiry-based learning? Why is it necessary for us to talk about inquiry-based learning? Like I said that it is one of the best forms of teaching that every teacher should adopt. Every teacher should adopt it. Every teacher in the 21st century, in fact, must adopt this method of teaching. Like I said, in today's world, or like we all know, in today's world, students need, as a matter of necessity, need to develop critical thinking skills. Yeah, they need to develop critical thinking skills. And the only way they can develop that is by engaging themselves through their teachers in inquiry-based learning. So it encourages students to question, to investigate, to solve real-world problems, thereby preparing them for the future. That is the essence of inquiry-based learning, to prepare our students for the future. Students to be ready for the future, for them to be future ready. Yeah, for them to be future ready. Talking about why inquiry-based learning is important. It's important because students need to develop critical thinking skills for them to be able to thrive in this current world, that's in the global, what we have now in the global scale, for your students to be able to thrive and perform better, for us to raise outliers. Outliers are those that, they're uh, like, so they're like the best amongst us are. That's why it's necessary for you as a teacher in your teaching, in all you're doing in the classroom, you must develop or train or raise outliers. Outliers. Gone are the days of chalk to board, board to book, la cram, la pour, la forget. Gone are the days of that. Now everybody's talking about raising students that will perform better on a global scale. Raising students that when they go out there, they are not going to, shrink or going to, turn into what you don't know. So what is inquiry-based learning? IBL is a teaching approach where students learn by asking questions. They're the ones that ask the question. They're the ones that also find answer. They're the ones that find answers. So they construct meaning by the answers they've gotten from the questions they are asking. Yeah. So that is what inquiry-based learning is all about. So it empowers your students to actively engage in the class, to actively participate in the class, thereby shifting your own role, you the teacher, as just the facilitator of learning experiences. So instead of you being the only person that is talking, instead of you being the sage on the stage, you just take a back seat and just be the facilitator. Instead of you being the driver, you take a back seat and be like the facilitator of the learning experiences. So the students construct their learning by themselves. And any learning that is constructed by the students, definitely that learning is going to stick. In fact, they will not, I don't think they'll forget it, because they will remember the processes by they took to find the answer to the questions. So that's what inquiry-based learning is. So we're going to draw a difference, yeah, or a distinction between the normal, the traditional learning style, traditional classroom, and inquiry-based classroom. Like I said, IBL is a 21st century teaching and learning idea, or yeah, teaching and learning idea. So in the traditional classroom, the one that we're used to, the one that most of us in the traditional classroom, the answer. Teacher asks, the students answer. But in IBL, the students ask, the students discover the answers and the teacher guides. Remember, we said that the teacher is just the facilitator. So here, teacher just guides. But in the traditional classroom, the teacher is all in all. The teacher knows everything. The students just listen and answer the question. Have to find the answer or discover the answer, because the teacher will be quick to give them answer. That is for the traditional classroom. Now, the second difference or characteristic is that one right answer is expected in the traditional classroom. So in the traditional classroom, there are no different answers. One answer is correct. But in IBL, multiple pathways are explored to arrive at that answer. In traditional, you just have one process of finding the answer that will be used to find the answer. But in IBL, multiple pathways, there are different pathways to go through for you to arrive at the answer. Then for the traditional classroom, textbook is the authority. Yeah, the textbook is the all in all. The textbook is the document that has everything that has to do with that class. But in IBL, evidence and reasoning are very, very important. Yeah, evidence of how you arrived at that answer, or the reasoning behind it, depending on the subject or on the topic. So that's for IBL. Then for traditional classroom, the students receive knowledge from their teacher or from the textbook. But in IBL, the students discover knowledge by themselves. And like I said, the knowledge that was discovered by the students, it will be very, very difficult for them to forget, because remember, they're the ones that found the knowledge by themselves. So it will be very difficult, almost impossible for them to forget. So the last characteristic of a traditional classroom is we have passive listening. So the students just sit, the teacher pour into them, they and listen, write their notes, do the assignments accompanying the notes, read for their exam, pass, and forget about everything. That's it for the traditional classroom. So passive listening is very, very common. But in IBL classroom, we have active investigation. Remember, we said that it's the students that find out their knowledge by themselves, find out the answer to the question that they found out by themselves. So traditional is passive listening, but IBL is active investigation. So these are the difference between the traditional classroom and the inquiry-based classroom. Let's move on to the next, which is importance of IBL, importance of inquiry-based learning. Why is it important? The first reason that we also started with is it helps to build critical thinking skills in students. That's 21st century skills in students, sorry. It helps to build 21st century skills in students. And the common, these are not all, there are many, but the common 21st century skills that this IBL will help to build is critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. Yeah, so critical thinking, because The students are going to think about the question, either the one you gave them or the one they decided to come up with themselves. They're going to think about it before they will be able to arrive at a reply or at a result. So they will think, they will analyze the information they've gotten, they will solve problems. All these are skills that are needed, very, very necessary to be able to navigate the modern world. So it builds 21st century skills in your students. The second skill it builds is collaboration. Collaboration is when your students are able to interact with others, with other students, work together, share ideas, learn from one another, and also come at a conclusion. That is collaboration. So it will help your students through group projects, because some IBL, some inquiry-based learning methods we require that they come together as a group. You put them together in a group and they will come up with answers to the question. So IBL promotes collaboration. It allows students to work together, allows them to share ideas that they've gotten from the research they made, yes, learn from one another, and also foster a sense of community and teamwork. Now, the third 21st century skill that IBL builds is communication. Yeah, communication is very, very important. Communication is not just speaking. Communication is you speaking and you listening and you understanding what the other person is saying. That's the essence of communication. So it's not just about you speaking, it's about you speaking to be understood and also understanding the person that is speaking. So IBL helps to build communication skills in your students because they'll be able to speak, they'll be able to articulate their thoughts, they'll be able to present their findings, because definitely when they arrive at a conclusion, or yeah, when they arrive at a conclusion, they should be able to say how they got there, the things they went through to get there. So that is building communication skills in your students. So even a student that you might think is shy, or a student that you might think is quiet, but when you give them a platform, yeah, when you give them that platform to be able to speak, you might be shocked at what they're going to come up with. Yeah, you might be shocked at what they're going to come up with. So it builds 21st century skills in your students. The next importance, or the next thing that IBL helps, is to enhance students' engagement. It enhances students' engagement. We say that the students are involved in their learning. Yeah. So when the students are curious, maybe you throw a question that is somehow to them and they start thinking about it, start brainstorming. As they are brainstorming, they are speaking. So thereby enhancing students' engagement in your class. So it prompts them to ask questions that relates to their interests, also encourages active involvement in their teaching, in the teaching and learning process. So you're not the only person speaking, they are part of the teaching and learning process, which will also help them to own that understanding. Yeah, to help them to own that understanding. They are not going to lose it in a hurry. Now, the third reason, or the third importance of IBL is it builds real life problem solving skills in students. Yeah, so when students think critically, yeah, they're going to come up with solutions. Yeah, when they think critically, they're going to definitely come up with solutions to a problem. So being able to solve a problem is a life skill that your students should have. So you can't just teach them, assuming you're teaching them mathematics now, and you're teaching them what now? Which example will I use? You're teaching them profit and loss. Yeah, yes, cost price, and when we have cost price and selling price, that's what you're teaching them. You're already building that skill for those of them that want to go into business. There's a way you will teach them. Maybe you create a scenario of a business or a market scenario where people are buying and selling. Yeah, where they themselves are buying and selling. Is all part of IBL. So you go home and research, make inquiry, ask their parents, and come to school, and also do what they learned. So you're building critical thinking skills in your students, which also prepare them for the future, prepare them to be able to solve life problems. Any question? Any question? Any question? Okay, okay, thank you. So let's go to common misconceptions surrounding IBL.
No question.
Common, sorry, what did you say?
I said no question. Go on.
All right, thank you. So the common misconceptions surrounding IBL, what many teachers think IBL is not. So the first, people think that, or teachers think that IBL is not structured, but actually it is. IBL is carefully designed by you to create effective learning experiences. So it's not left for you to learn how to do that. Yes, it's left for you, the teacher, to learn how to, creatively design an IBL experience. So it's not unstructured, it is very, very structured. The second misconception is that teachers think that IBL is just for sciences. No, it's for every, in fact, I think it's less for sciences. Yes, because some of the scientific concepts we do, they're actually abstract. Unless we find a way to make it concrete. Yes, make it relatable to what the students know. So IBL is not just for science subjects, it's across every subject, down to what now? Down to CRS. Yeah, down to CRS. So IBL is not just for sciences. It's meant to empower students to engage meaningfully. Now, the third misconception about IBL is that the teacher will just have to disappear at the background while the students do their thing. No, it's not so. It's not so. Like I said, that you are the facilitator. Does not mean that you disappeared. You're there. Yeah, you're there guiding, encouraging, and trying to help the shy ones to join you. Welcome, Ms. Folua. So for you during IBL, your role as a teacher is that of the facilitator, not a shadow. You're like a shadow, not that you disappeared into the background. You're there. You're there to encourage. You're there to provide support. You're there to help the students to move further. So these are the misconceptions that, assuming you have one, it's time for you to let go of that misconception. So like we're going to have a very short exercise, very, very short, a minute stops exercise where we are going to experience IBL. Let me go. Yes. So see what we have on the screen. A student comes to school every day, sits in the front row, listens carefully, takes notes, scores 95 in every test. 6 months after graduation, she cannot hold a conversation about anything she studied. She has no opinion. She cannot apply what she learned in any real situation. I mean, this is a student that is doing well, that school will name an excellent student. Now, I have two questions for us, and I will need us to answer. What went wrong with this student's education, and what would you have done differently as her teacher? Yes, so let me have our responses. Either you can unmute yourself and speak, or you use the chat.
Okay, good evening, coach.
Good evening.
Okay, what went wrong is most likely the method the teacher used. Maybe it was more of the lecture method, just the teacher being the one talking, and there was no
Uh-huh.
maybe discussion or thought-provoking questions. There was no practical. no hands-on experience for the child, depending on the child's learning style. Majorly the method, and probably
Mm.
what I would have done if there is time and there is opportunities, probably to ensure that it is you relate it to daily experience, even if you explain, but you will not do, if you relate it like the entry behavior that we do, if you relate it to what the child, the everyday life, then the child will also see that okay, it can is applicable, the learning is applicable. So and if it's a topic that can be practicalized, then you allow them do hands-on too.
Okay. Okay, great, great. This is impressive. Thank you very much. She said that what went wrong is basically, or yeah, basically, mostly the teaching method, the method that was used to teach these students. So it's very possible that the teacher was using the normal lecture method of, you teach, I teach, you listen, you take down notes, then you read and you pass and forget about what you've learned. Very good. Thank you very much. Any other person? Any other person? Any other that has another addition? Okay, her education was focused mainly on results. Yes. The evidence of learning was purely her grades. Most definitely. Most definitely. I think that's the common thing in many schools now. Yeah, that's very, very common across the world. Education, people equate good grades to learning, but it's not usually so. Yeah, someone might have good grades, but the person did not learn. Yeah, the person did not learn. There's something we used to say in our secondary school. We say it's la cram, la pour, la forget. Yeah, it's very possible that that's what happens to this student. Very possible that she crammed, she learned, she not learned now, she crammed, she poured into the exam, and she definitely forgot.
Mm,
Yeah, very, very, very true. Possibly she learned by rote
when I'm
learning.
done.
Say repeat after me, the teacher will say, the students will chorus. The teacher will say, I always tell my students, see, gone are the days where your students repeat after you. No, gone are the days. Now they should speak. They should do more of the speaking because the class is actually
Mm,
for them. Class is actually for them.
when
So
I'm
they should
done.
do more of the speaking, then you facilitate. You facilitate. So Miss Moyi, do you have something to say?
Yes,
I want to
ma'am.
say something.
What
Okay.
I think is that the learning is passive.
Yeah.
Real understanding is not really taking place, and the learners is not practicing. So that's what I
Mm,
think is happening. And the lesson they are learning is not really related to what is happening real life. Let me just say
mm,
practicing is not taking place. So as
yeah.
a
Yeah.
teacher, what I can do is by giving real life task for them to see
Mm,
that okay, they should apply what they are learning to what is happening around them in the
mm.
environment of the society.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So relating their learning to their experiences, to their reality. Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Elvis, you have something to say?
Yes, I do. In terms of what I wrote about the grades, judging by
Mm,
grades on paper,
mm,
no issues. But the thing is, what what are the contents of that grades? Is it just
mm,
paper and pen exam? Because now you can actually grade test exam. You can actually grade like when the what you the slide says that the child cannot hold a conversation. So most likely
mm,
the child maybe social issues or maybe is not a good speaker publicly. So those things
mm.
can still be part of the grades. Understand? Okay, in
Yeah.
fact, I'm happy with this training because today, where I went today, I was discussing this particular issue with a teacher from another school. Teacher from
All
another school. I
right.
was telling her we are talking about these things. So we are talking about. So I was telling her what I would have done if I was still in the classroom now.
Mm,
So because I was telling her, I can't imagine still being in the class now and I'm copying notes on the board. It doesn't can't work. Now, so
mm,
we are talking about now. project. We're talking about how schools give projects. So I gave a scenario
mm,
that I know a situation where school brings out a theme and they will link that theme for that project, maybe for that class or the department or whatever. They will link it to one SDG. You understand?
yeah,
They will link it to one
yeah,
SDG. And then
yeah,
with that theme now, they will tell the students to now develop that thing. I can't go into full details now because of time. So they now tell the students to develop it.
yeah,
So the students will be giving guides on what to do, the theme, what it should relate to.
yeah,
Now the students will now do the
mm,
work. So this is kind of
mm-hmm.
thing that will make the students to think. You understand? So that's why in the situation of this person now, maybe it's probably the grades will probably contain test, assignment, exam, and that's it. So, but if certain real life uh, traits are assessed or tested or being tried to being imbibed in them, even with the grades can still contain something that she can use in the real world. You understand?
Yes,
So
yes,
the content of the grades is what matters. That's what I'm trying to say. Understand?
okay.
So
Thank you
that's
very much for this insightful contribution. Very insightful. You know, you said that the school links the project to an SDG, and that's a very
yeah,
laudable idea. Yeah, very very laudable
yeah,
because many schools don't know about this SDG now. In fact, I'm not sure many
at
teachers know
all.
about the SDGs. I'm not sure many
Yeah,
teachers even remember that there is SDG, much less know about it.
about it.
So
Exactly. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. So we're talking
Very
about
possible
it,
that
and I was because
mm, go on.
finish up. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I was telling her that because in school I worked as one of the management staff. So I brought up
Mm,
because I was telling the school that it was a school that was a big school in quotes. Understand? But
mm,
one day I told the director towards the time I was leaving. But I told the director that yes, the difference between this school and I mentioned another school, a federal government college, one of them around us. I said the
mm.
difference between this school and this other
That's
school
true.
is just aesthetics, structures.
If I knew
You
structure.
understand? She was looking at me. I said because your school is still teaching the same way I was taught. There
Mm,
is no difference.
mm.
Your school is still teaching the same way I was taught. No difference.
That's
So
so
he was
sweet.
just looking at me. So you can claim to be a big school, but what are you doing to differentiate yourself from the normal schools in quotes or ordinary schools or smaller schools? So these are the things that because you can't be doing grades based on test assignment project and even the method of teaching that is still old and you are still trying to and you are claiming to be a big school. No,
You're big school.
not done. So those are the
Thank you very
things.
much. Thank you very much. So it's very possible, like he said, it's very possible that this 95% you're seeing here, like the story says in every test. So it's possible that they didn't check for the other domains of learning. Maybe they
Yes,
just focus on
exactly.
cognitive and forget about
Cognitive.
affective and psychomotor, which are also important. In fact, psychomotor now is becoming more important than cognitive. I'm not saying you should not teach your students. Of course, they should learn. Yeah, they should understand what photosynthesis is. But how does photosynthesis apply to their reality? How can they relate to it? I remember my biology teacher
Mm,
when I was in SS1, when he wanted to teach us skeleton. You know now, government school now, there is no instructional material. They just come with their notes and they talk and we imagine. So the what he used to teach us that skeleton is fish bone. He said, have you ever removed the flesh of a fish and just looked at the bone like that? We started imagining because all of us in that classroom has eaten fish and we know how the bone is, how the bone of the fish, how the skeleton of the fish is. So he started pointing all the parts. He was just mentioning the parts, telling us where it is in the fish. He said that soft part in the fish, in the head of the fish, is called this. That's how we understood skeleton. In fact, that was how skeleton was able to be relatable to us, because we've not seen any human being that is a skeleton now. Every human being we are seeing have flesh. So there's no way we can say, okay, look at the length of the bone and look at the color of the bone. But he used that fish to be able to relate what he was teaching to us. So we could make connection between what he was teaching and what we are already familiar with. So in all your teaching, in everything that you're teaching, make sure that your teaching is relating to what your students already know. Yeah, what they already know, what they are already aware of. Yeah, we're all in almost the same, all your students are almost in the same country. Even if you're an online teacher, you should have an idea of what your students are familiar with, wherever it is they are. If you're an offline teacher, very beautiful. You have your students right beside you. So IBL will help you as a teacher to be able to raise outliers, raise critical thinkers, raise those that think. I asked my students one day, what is critical thinking? They told me it's thinking fast. I said it's not thinking fast, it's thinking deep. And I said, okay, they don't know what it is. All they know that it's not critical. So it's merely they ask you a question, you answer. I said, no, that is thinking deep, not thinking fast. And I said, okay, so you should be able to raise students that will be able to think deep, make sense of their thinking, and also give you an answer. So let's move on to the levels of inquiry based learning, to the levels of IBL. So we have 4 levels. We have the confirmation inquiry, we have the structured inquiry, we have the guided inquiry, and we have the open inquiry. So this is the remaining 2. We have this the remaining 2. So let's go to the first 2, which is confirmation inquiry and structured inquiry. So confirmation inquiry, this is like the first stage. Yeah, this is like the first level of inquiry, where you can now, you as a teacher can give your students questions. You can give them the question, or you have a set of procedure to confirm a result you know. So this is mostly used in science experiments. Like you have, you know that when you add this to this, it's going to give you this. That's like a known result. But when you give your students procedures to follow to be able to confirm that known result, that is confirmation inquiry. So this is very, very good for beginners. Yeah, this is very good for, I mean, both teachers that are beginners and students that are beginners. Like I said, for example, you can say, we said that plants need sunlight to grow. Now, that is a known result. We all know that plants need sunlight to grow. Now, how can students now test that? That is the inquiry-based learning that you're going to do. So you and your students will now test it. How will they test it? They should plant 2 sets of maybe bean seed, one inside, one outside. And they can now infer or observe and conclude that sunlight helps plants to grow. Yeah, so that is confirmation inquiry. The next type of inquiry is structured inquiry. Structured inquiry. So in this type, the teacher provides the question, the teacher provides the procedure, and now allow the students to draw their conclusion. So here the teacher does the providing. The first one is there's a known result. Here the teacher provides the question, also provides the procedure, and also allow students to come to their conclusion. So it's the students that will now draw their conclusions by asking questions. Yeah, asking questions. So this is also good for teachers that are new to IBL. Yeah, and also it's a very safe starting point. Yeah, for many teachers. So if you're testing out how to use IBL as a teacher, you can start from here. So an example is you can give the students an experiment and give them steps. Yeah, give them steps on how to arrive at their own conclusion. So their conclusions might be different, but you've already given them steps. There's an experiment you do in chemistry, titration. Yeah, titration. So you can have 10 groups of students doing that titration. Well, they are not going to have the same result. Like the results from the reading is not going to be the same because there are different factors. But we are giving procedures on how to arrive at that conclusion. So that's a structured inquiry. Now the next level, level 3, is guided inquiry. Guided inquiry. So here, this teacher provides the question, and the students design their own procedure and draw a conclusion. So here, the teacher just gives the question and the students design the procedure and also draw the conclusion. Unlike structured is the teacher gives the question, gives the procedure, and the students now draw the conclusion. But for guided, the teacher provides just the question and the students now design their own procedure. For example, you can ask the students, sorry, I'm using more of science examples here. I'm a science teacher. So you can ask the students, how does temperature affect the rate of dissolving? You now tell them to design a way to find that out. So they will now go home, brainstorm, do their research, and come with their own procedure and draw their own conclusion. So this is also good for students, that already have some IBL experience. So it will also help them to build independence because they are designing their own procedure, which is very, very important. And that procedure that they are designing is very important for them because they are not going to forget the process. They're not going to forget. So they can arrive at a conclusion if you give them you should give them the procedure. But when you allow them to design their own procedure and draw a conclusion, you're also helping them to build independence. Now, the last level, which is like the serious level of IBL, is open inquiry. Open inquiry. So here, the students will now generate the questions in relation to the topic, design the investigation, and present their findings. All you do as a teacher is just to facilitate, like I said. So you can tell the students, maybe there is a problem, or maybe the topic is global warming or some environmental sustainability. So you can tell the students, our topic today is sustainability. Look around your environment and know what you can say is wrong, and also design the investigation and present findings. Yeah, the students can do that. So this is for advanced students, depending on the level of your students or how good they are in IBL or how good they are in inquiry. That is what will determine if you're going to use this level for your students, or you just start with the first 3 levels. But in all, make sure that every week you're incorporating IBL in your teaching. Yeah, incorporating IBL. Like I said, you don't have to start at the 4th level. Yeah, but start somewhere. Start from maybe level 2. Make sure that you're starting from somewhere. The most important thing is progress. You don't have to be perfect, but make sure that you are moving. Yeah, make sure that you're moving. Make sure that your students are inquirers. Yeah, make sure that they are inquirers. So now, like I said, that the I said that you should start. Make sure you start. Don't just leave your students hanging and give them all the answers all the time. Sorry. So moving on. Okay. Now, this is like a difference or a distinction between the first 2 levels and the last 2 levels. Now, level 1 and 2 focuses on structured approaches. Here, the students guide the students through confirmation and structural inquiries. Here, the students are guided by the teacher through confirmation and through structured inquiries. So here, these methods, like I said that the first 2 methods is very ideal for teachers that are starting out. So if you like when we resume school now and you want to incorporate IBL, you can start with the first 2 levels. Don't jump to the third and fourth, please. Start with the first 2 levels. When you've built a muscle, yeah, you can now move on to the next level. So it will help you to gradually transition into more student learning experiences to foster engagement and also curiosity, because learning now thrives on curiosity. Yeah, learning thrives on curiosity. So now for level 3 and 4, this is where the students now actually own their learning, because they take charge of the process of inquiry. Remember, we said that they generate their questions, they design investigations, and also come to a conclusion. So here, they are the owners of their journey. In the first one, you are just like a guide, a tour guide to their journey. But here, they are the owners of their journey. And I think this is more sustainable. Yeah, this is more sustainable, especially for now, so that remember the example we gave, she couldn't express herself in the public because she does not have that muscle to be able to express herself. Now let's go to the next, which is IBL learning structure. IBL learning structure. So how does IBL look? What does it look like in essence? So we've been saying IBL since. So what does it look like? What's the pattern? What's the pattern? Yeah. So I've used this for across different subjects now. Across different subjects. This will also help you to design your own inquiry activity as a teacher. So we have the first level, which is the hook. Yeah, which is the hook or provocation. Here you engage your students through curiosity. Yeah, you start with something that creates curiosity, start with something that creates a cognitive tension. Cognitive tension is that gap between what your students know or what they think they know and what they are trying to understand. So you start with a hook, very, very captivating hook that will make them listen and that will make them pause. So you can use a puzzling image, maybe an image that they can't really make sense of here. You can use it to catch their attention. You can use a surprising statistic. You can use a real world problem that they are familiar with. You can use a question that does not really have an answer. You can use thought provoking questions. You can use scenarios that are quite intriguing, that are interesting, so that your students will, that this is just to get their attention. This is to get their attention. People are joining. This getting the hook stage is just to get the attention of your students. So this will now make them to start thinking deeper, to start thinking deeper. So let's have an example in okay, let's use an example in English. I've been using science all this while. Let's use an example in English. I have an example here. The example is read this paragraph. That's what you tell your students now. Read this paragraph. The grammar is technically correct, but something is wrong. What is it and why does it matter? So you should now make them to read that paragraph, so that they will also find out what is wrong with that paragraph. Because you told them that there is something wrong, even when nothing is wrong with the paragraph. You told them that there is something wrong with the paragraph. There is a post I saw today on LinkedIn. So the lady posted a video of where some children were dancing. So she now said that we should check which students. Many of I watched that video seeing that has autism, and she now said, okay, if you have the answer, you put it in the comment. That's how all of us watched the video. Everybody was putting in the answer, and most of us were correct, because the person that has the autism, you have to look carefully. If not, you will not know that is the autistic child. You will not know because he's among those playing, but he has autism. Yeah, he's on the spectrum. So that's a hook. Yeah, that's a thought-provoking question that you can ask your students. Now, the next stage, the next stage of IBL, or the next structure of IBL is is now making the question or giving them the question. I don't know why you're slow. Okay, like I said, posing the inquiry question, giving them the question. So when you've given them that hook, now you can now find out a very strong question that the answer is not yes or no. It's not a simple yes or no. The question that they will have to think. First, it must connect to real life. Second, it must spark genuine thinking, not just random questions that has an obvious answer. Even if it has an obvious answer, there's a way you can ask the question, twist the question that will make them to really think. And when they now arrive at the answer, they'll be like, oh, okay, so this is the answer. But they've already thought, their brain has moved. And that's what we want, for that brain to move. So the a strong inquiry question does not have a simple yes or no. Does not have one particular answer. It has more than one particular has more than one possible answer, or more than one approach. It also connects to real life or prior experience, and it also sparks thinking. Yeah, sparks thinking. So the questions must be deep for them to think deep, not a what is, or what you understand by. Sometimes that what you understand by does not really push deep thinking. Yeah, does not really. But if you say, now, what do you think about? You now give a question that, yeah, it has an answer that you, the teacher, you know the answer, obviously. But the way you ask the question will prompt the students to think deep. Yeah, to think deep. So the next structure, or the next level of IBL is investigation and exploration. So this is where the students now gather information. This is where they gather information after you've given them the puzzling question. So they will now gather the information here, either online or ask people around, depending on the topic. Yeah, ask questions, conduct experiments if needed, conduct researches, like I said, debate among themselves, that is brainstorm. If it's a group work, here you just facilitate, like I said. Facilitate so you can ask probing questions that will promote deeper thinking. You just move around and investigate and watch what they are doing. That is, if it is a group, activity. Yeah. So when they finally maybe arrive at the answer, you cannot ask them, what made you say so, or how did you come to this conclusion? Yeah. So that is investigation and exploration. The students now gather information, analyze the data they've gathered, and discuss ideas. That is investigation and exploration. Now, the fourth structure, or the fourth level of IBL, is the one we call the sense making, or the discussion level. So remember that they've already gathered information, they've already arrived at an answer, they've already found answer to the question. So this is where their findings now make sense to them. This is where they now compare their findings, share their findings with each other, compare the results, and finally come to a conclusion. This is where learning really, really happens. This is where learning becomes visible, because what they've investigated, this is where they now put it together and arrive at a conclusion. So here is good, even if there are disagreements, yeah, between the students now, not between you and them. The agreement between the students. Maybe this one has a very different result from this other person. You can also allow them to, banter, yeah, not strong, but a little bit of banter. When they think, this one will say, okay, what did you think is so? You just stand and watch and control the room. Yeah. So this is the fourth stage of IBL. The last stage is what we call the reflection and the conclusion stage. So this is where students now say what they've learned. Yeah, this is where they speak what they learned. This is where they explain how they learned it, because it's not enough for the students to say what they learned. It's also very important for the students to say how they learned it. So here you now add more understanding, you correct misconceptions, and make sure that you're connecting all these things to the curriculum objective. Remember, it's the curriculum that guides us. You can't teach away from the curriculum. So whatever it is you're doing in the class, make sure that it is hinged on the curriculum objective. So this is where you now correct misconceptions, because every child that is coming into your class is coming with one form of misconception or the other, either wrong knowledge or half knowledge. So this is where you now correct the misconceptions and bring everything together. Now let's go to the common challenges that you will face, not you might, that you will face when incorporating IBL in the class. Yeah, common challenges that you will face as a teacher when incorporating IBL in the class. The first one is passive students. Yeah, there's very important. There's every tendency that you're going to have passive students in your class. That means students that they can't be bothered. They don't want to. They don't even want to be part of the learning, and I don't really blame them, especially if they are used to this normal status quo type of learning that is actually boring. So maybe they will think, okay, you've come again with another boring style. But when you now ask them a question, or you make use of think per share, that is, they think by themselves or think together, they share amongst themselves, they now present in the class. Yeah, it also helps students to think. There's no child, no matter how passive that child is, when you bring in a problem, or a question that will make them think. You can't control thinking now. Thinking is something that is just comes. You can't control it. So even if you have passive students in the class, it's not even a problem. All you need to do, just start. Ask that question and you watch them start thinking. So another common challenge that teachers face is large classes, like a class where you have 50 something students. Yeah, it's quite large. I've taught in a class where there are 100 and something. One class during my NYSC. When you enter the class, you will first of all breathe in and breathe out before you now start teaching, because you have to project your voice for them to hear you. So large class size is also a problem that some teachers face during IBL. So here you can assign roles. Yeah, assign roles. You can have someone that will be asking the question, have someone that will be recording, have someone that will be, that will be in charge of things to report, the reporter, the person that will report, or the person that will present, have someone that's the timekeeper. So this is a very good uh, avenue for you to have groups. If you have large class size, if your class size is large, you can now divide them into maybe groups of 10, depending on their number anyway. You put them in groups. It's going to even make your work easier. So in those groups that you've now put them, you now have rules. You assign rules, like a permanent rule. So anywhere, anytime you want to teach using IBL, everybody knows their role and everybody will deliver. In fact, they even be more interested, because almost every student will be actively engaged during the discussion and during the activities in the class. Now, another common challenge, which is very common, even without IBL, the very common challenge in IBL is curriculum pressure. Yeah, curriculum pressure. So sometimes you say, no time, or the curriculum is really not allowing you to express yourself. Just start small. You can start with 5 minutes. I'm not saying that your whole class should be IBL. Maybe the beginning should just be IBL, then the remaining is just use it to conclude the class. But make sure that you're including IBL in your class, please. Make sure that you're including, even if it's 5 minutes. 5 minutes is going to go a long way. You can just start it like Mr. Mita started with entry behavior. You can just start it as an entry behavior. As I'm thinking, you're also gathering your thoughts, gathering how you're going to start the class. So by the time they've given their ideas, yeah, giving their different ideas, you can now bring everything together and now teach. So curriculum pressure should not even be a problem. Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. So like I said, we've already addressed these issues. So issues like this curriculum pressure and overcoming wrong conclusion. So you start with brief inquiries, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes is enough. Yeah, you start with brief inquiries. Do you know that most times when you teach for long, the students will forget the first thing you said? Have we noticed it?
all,
Now, when
all the time,
for
not
long,
sometimes.
okay, even all the time. Even we adults, it
Yes.
happens to us. When there's a lot of information, this one is coming, this one is coming, this one is coming, there's a very great tendency of forgetting the first thing that was said. But if the first thing that was said was what the students discovered by themselves, not what you now told them. The tendency is very high that they're going to retain that information. Yeah, they're going to retain that information. You know, you cannot start IBM in the middle of your class. It does not make sense. The advice was use it to start the class. Then you now use your other methods to conclude the class. So now another thing we have to talk about is building confidence in teaching, because many teachers are not really confident to use IBL, possibly because they don't know how to use it. Yeah, yeah, probably because they don't know how to use it, because they need to write everything down. It's okay. It's very very okay. Very very okay. Yeah, you need to prepare thought provoking questions beforehand. That is all part of your lesson planning. Yeah, you can't just enter into the class without having something you will do. Of course, you have to prepare the questions beforehand so that your students will facilitate. So prepare like 5 to 7 probing questions that you know your students, you know them, you know their level, you know their capacity. Yeah. So you can prepare some questions. Google is there, ChatGPT is there to come up with questions. Gmind AI is there to come up with probing questions that you can use to start your class. Yeah, just start from there. With time, it will even be easy, very, very easy for you to just quickly use it. So we are going to do another exercise. This one is also short. I'm going to do another exercise. We're almost coming to a close, but we're almost done. So now I have a very quick design activities for you. So what you're going to do now is very soon. I think schools are resuming on Monday, if I'm not wrong. So you pick one topic you're teaching in the next 2 weeks. That's after resumption. You write one inquiry question for it. Now, after writing that inquiry question, you now identify the level of inquiry you should use and what the hook is going to be. Do we understand the question? What you will do, you're not going to do it now, most definitely. You're going to do it later. That's like your assignment for the crash course.
All right.
Yes, okay. So you're going to do it later and submit it. I don't know if you're on the group. If you're not on that group, please be on that group. So that's where everything, even this slide, I'm going to provide the slides so that you can use it. Okay, thank you. So that you can use it to, especially the level of inquiry. Then you also make sure you come up with a hook that you're going to use for the class, for the topic that you're going to work on. Yeah, like I said, we're almost rounding up, almost coming to a close. Hold on. Now, quick reflection for you. This is what you go home as just you just thinking about it. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be in another meeting now. Just keep recently, especially the one you taught before the holidays. Think about the lesson you taught recently. You know, don't worry, all these slides will be made available. All these slides will be made available. You don't really need to read everything. I'll make the slides available. So if you're not on that group, please join the group. If you need the link, you tell me. I will send you the link. So yes, IBL, inquiry-based learning, it transforms how your students engage in the class, of fostering critical thinking and curiosity, thereby helping your students to be problem solvers, to be solution bringers. So it's high time for you as a teacher to shift from the traditional method of teaching and move into the method of teaching that is going to nurture, you know, your students, make them stand out on a global stage. Yeah, make them stand out on a global stage. I think that is the essence of education now. We're not just raising students that will just, be local champions. Yeah, they'll just be the best amongst their local mates. No, we are raising students that will be the best outside. So beyond their locality, yeah, beyond their classroom, we are raising students that will be the best outside. So you replace traditional methods of teaching with inquiry based learning. so that your students will be the best outside and not be like that lady that we talked about that could not engage in conversation. I've seen, apart from the story, I've seen many people that good grades, good results, but they can't speak, they can't express themselves. Either they are too timid or they don't just know what to say. Yeah, I mean they are good. They are good academic, they have good grades, but they just can't express themselves. So, any question for me? Any question? Any question? Yes, but you just be for those that are here. Just be for those that are here. The recording, just be for those that are here. Anybody that missed it, we pay to get the recording. Yeah, yes, they will pay to get the recording. But yeah, that's it. I think all of us here